Welcome to another episode of the Bottom Line Podcast, where we say what we mean and we mean what we say, because at the core of everything that is, was, and forever will be, there will always be the bottom line. Today's guest is a business development associate over at Princeton Mortgage out in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. I think of Pennsylvania so much, not so much about PA, Philadelphia, because I don't really go to Philly like that. But PA is massive. I was on the Pennsylvania Turnpike not too long ago, and it's like a stretch road. Today's guest, Mrs. Gillian Balzano, is a business development representative over at Princeton Mortgage, where she helps people more so on a business to business, business to consumer relationship, where it's really focused around creating strong and effective relationships. Today's guest is Miss Gillian Balzano. How are you, Gillian? How's everything going?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you can make the time to be on today with all the craziness going on in your schedule and all, right?
Oh, yeah. It's been a good time for the mortgage industry, but better to be busy than bored, I always say.
Busy than bored. Yeah, love it. Yeah, I'm with that. Yeah. How's business been going for you since the pandemic struck?
It has been crazy. The mortgage industry is probably one of the better industries to be in currently.
Yeah.
Interest rates are historic lows right now. So
Yeah.
it's a good time to be in mortgages for sure.
Yeah, definitely. What were you doing pre-COVID before this whole thing happened? Like, how was business going for you? Were you like in the office a lot, or were you doing a lot virtually?
Yeah, so I actually had a very interesting COVID experience. I was with a different company prior to the start of the pandemic and was unfortunately laid off, which was super scary, and I don't think anyone foresaw that. And I had no idea where I was going to end up. It was definitely worrisome, but I was lucky to land on my feet with Princeton Mortgage. It was definitely a blessing in disguise. I don't think I would have voluntarily left my last position, but I'm so much happier where I am now.
Yeah, that's good to hear. A lot of people are, was finding it really hard to adjust, unexpected layoffs, filing for unemployment, qualifying for unemployment, reduced hours. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had since March, actually, since we went into lockdown, where people were like going through, I want to say, just so many different emotions, but like all at the same time. Sometimes people were angry, upset, happy, sad, because they got to work from home, overwhelmed with the whole e-learning thing. So they were, finding different ways to pivot, right?
Right.
What were you doing biz dev primarily at your last job before
Yeah,
the transition?
I've pretty much always been in some kind of business development role throughout my entire career.
Okay. Yeah. So you're pretty much a people person. Yeah. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I would think that's fair to say.
Yeah. Okay. What attracted you to biz dev?
I kind of naturally fell into it. I have an interesting background, not your classic business school, get into the business field from there. I actually went to school for dance. I have a BFA in jazz dance performance.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so I kind of find a similarity in the performance aspect of actual dance, and then talking to people and creating these relationships, it kind of gives me the same high per se when you make a good connection and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So jazz dance, that's sophisticated, I'd say. Yeah. Sounds like a lot of fun too. What kind of kid were you as a child, Gillian? Were you an artistic, creative, chatty, Cathy kind of child? What kind of child were you?
So I actually was pretty shy as a kid. I am an only child, but I have a huge extended family, which is nice. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. Only child at home, and then I had a million cousins that are like brothers and sisters.
Nice.
So a little bit of both, but I was pretty shy. I was reserved. That is until my parents put me into dance. I started dancing when I was 3, and I just kind of came alive in the dance studio. It definitely brought out my personality, and I found my voice from there. And the older I got, the more I kind of came into my personality. When I tell people I was a shy kid. Now they don't believe it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe. Our first conversation, you seemed so people oriented and so personable. It just felt like a comfortable conversation. So yeah, when you think about dancing and you think about the performing arts itself, there is an element of vulnerability, I'd say, that you're not prepared for. You know, I look at guys, I look at you know, Dancing with the Stars, you know, and I think, wow, like how they can just get on the dance floor and let it all go and still get judged and criticized, right? Um, that's something at 3 years old, I guess your parents getting you into dance and you coming out of your shell. How do you think that helped you today to, you know, develop, cultivate, and build relationships, meaningful relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is definitely a correlation, which I don't know that people always understand. To be in an art form or a serious athlete, anything like that, it takes so much hard work and dedication, and you have to prepare so much on the back end for this little chunk of time. I mean, a routine at competition could only be 3 minutes, but you've put in months and months of work. And same thing for athletes, an hour game after how many practices.
Right.
I think that's really translated into my work ethic and how I prepare for business things and situations. I think you got to do the work on the back end, and then the front end seems seamless and easy, and just kind of always putting your best foot forward.
Yeah, right. Full pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about pressure? Did you ever feel pressured as a child? At such a young age, at 3 years old. You know, I think about my daughter. My daughter's 5. And we gave her options, right? We said, and you know, when she's with her mom, so I'm divorced, like 4 years, right? So like
Okay.
when she's with her mom, she's this little shy baby girl, you know what I mean? But when she's with Papa, she's like this whole different person, like oh, so much personality. So we put her, I said to her, listen, you can either do, you know, gymnastics, you could do taekwondo, or you could do ballet, right? Which one do you prefer? And she says, I'm not doing, this is a 4-year-old talking, okay? She says, I'm not doing taekwondo. She says, I want to do ballet. So I find a school, a dance school, where we can get her to do both actually, ballet and gymnastics.
Wow.
And she was all about it. So there's a room now. It's like a private room with a bunch of little 4-year-olds in their little tutus, right? And she says, I'm not doing it if you guys can't watch me. I'm not going to be in there by myself. So now I was stuck in a weird space, right? Because here I am, I'm Papa. I have no idea, you know, what she's going through as a girl. And I don't know, you know, the pressure that she might be thinking about when it comes to going into ballet. So I think about the pressure that that was probably coming from your teachers, maybe your instructors, your parents, right? And here's this little 3-year-old girl, right? Now, was there any level of excitement when it came to, you know, dance, or was there a level of, oh, this is too much pressure? How was that for you?
I definitely experienced pressure, but I loved dance so early on and knew it was my passion that I think I was willing to do whatever it took.
Yeah.
And there was definitely pressure to do well. Luckily, my parents were never those stage parents that pushed me to the front or anything. I kind of naturally did that myself because dance came very naturally to me.
Right.
But again, I think it goes back to work ethic. I knew that I was the only one that could make myself better at dance to perform better for competitions or whatever we were doing. No teacher, no matter how much they yelled at you, could get you to work harder in class. It's something you had to decide for yourself.
Right.
So definitely some outside pressure, which I think is helpful in the long run, as long as it's not too traumatizing. But again, I was lucky to find that passion super early on and carry that through the rest of my life.
Love it. Love it. And do you see that, you know, your response to pressure maybe, or having to work under pressure, especially in a fast paced, you know, performance based industry like what you're in right now, both biz dev and lending? I mean, when the two come together, it's like added pressure on top of pressure, right? Do you think that primed you to be prepared to respond well to this kind of pressure?
Yeah, absolutely. I find myself doing best in those situations that are really pressure filled. I perform my best under pressure. Really, you have no other option when you're under pressure. You either do or you don't. And I'm usually not willing to not do it. So,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you seem so calm, cool, and collective, right? So it's like you've had some practice with the pressure. It's not new to you. I think about clients that I speak to who are more reserved, more analytical, more data driven, who are not 100% sure how they're going to respond to pressure. So they avoid it altogether,
Right.
right? Which is so, what would you say to someone who, they have the idea, they want to, get into maybe something that's more uh, relationship centered, relationship oriented, right? And it's gonna demand some added pressure. What are some things you would say, like some words of encouragement to someone, just so that they can transition into it smoothly?
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to be easy. I'm pretty confident and outgoing person, but I still experience that social anxiety and the anxiousness prior to a big conversation I know I'm going to have. A phrase that has stuck with me throughout my life, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but the gist of it is,
Right.
why worry about something that is happening in the future? You're putting yourself through it twice instead of just the time that you're actually going to experience it. I think
Right.
you need to, of course, think it through and plan a little bit before, but worrying yourself to death prior to a big conversation isn't going to help you.
Right.
Um, I also think you're never going to be absolutely ready to do anything. So the second you get that little inkling or motivation to jump into a biz dev role or something along those lines, just do it. You'll
Right.
figure it out. And as long as you're being genuine to yourself and going into it with the right intentions, you will land on your feet.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, I'm gonna take all of that right there, and I'm just gonna quote that. That's Gillian Balzano. Get it right, right? I co-sign that message, uh, and I think that's really what people need to hear at the end of the day, because now we're living in a time where we have to pivot, and we have to, it's no longer transactional. You know what I mean? Like just getting on the phone with someone and saying, "Hey, how are you? How are you getting along during these times?" It means something now, right? And people could tell, like, if there's an ulterior malicious intent
Right.
or motive behind it, right?
Mhm.
So let's talk about like who you were maybe in high school leading up to where you are now, right? Were you like this popular girl that was like unapproachable and like part of like the cool kids lunch table? Like, what kind of kid were you in high school?
I didn't love high school, actually. I wasn't the most popular. I wasn't a total nerd. I was somewhere in the middle. I was lucky to find a really good group of friends that are still my best friends to this day.
Right.
I think I matured a little younger than most people.
Okay.
My parents are on the older side to have a kid my age, and being an only child, it was the three of us. So I was around adults for most of my life, and
Right.
they really didn't baby me like some parents do, I think.
Sure.
Um, so I always just kind of had an understanding that there was so much more to life than this little bubble that is high school. And of
Yeah.
course, I had my fair share of drama and all of that. But I never got too involved because I knew there was something outside of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you ever feel the need to fit in, or maybe try to like keep your
Oh, yeah.
grades up and, the
Of
whole, because we go
course.
through that. Yeah, we go through that as
Yeah.
kids in high school. I know I did, right? But I kind of like
Yeah.
had this like huge afro, and I was like, I'm not going to fit in. I'm going to stand out, Like,
Right.
yeah, where were you? What side of the spectrum were you on? Are you trying to fit in, or are
Yeah.
you trying to stand out a bit?
A little bit of both. I don't think I ever wanted to create too many waves because then that draws some negative attention to you. And I
Sure.
was by no means mature enough to handle that at a high
Right.
school age. But I've always kind of liked quirkier things, and dance was my main focus all the way through college, like I said.
Yeah.
So that's where my focus was. Didn't play a sport in high school or anything like that. So I think I had a little bit of a different experience than most people do.
Okay. Yeah. So was there ever a shift where you realized that maybe high school was cool, but there was, like you said in the beginning, you said there was more to it than just high school in that little bubble, right? So it sounds like there was a shift at some point.
Yeah.
You were probably influenced by your parents. You're an only child, right? You said they were a little older to be having, a child your age. So there's a level of maturity. You're probably a little bit more mature than a lot of your peers, right?
Mhm.
So you probably had like a realistic perspective, right? To put it like
Yeah.
simply, right? How do you think that helped you to create relationships?
Mhm. Yeah. I think in high school, because of the lack of maturity and just that age that you're at, it's such a vulnerable age. You have no idea who you are yet.
Right.
I think having the dance piece and the older parents really gave me more of an identity at a younger age, which was really helpful, and understanding that this silly fight you're having with a girl over a boy you like in high school
Right.
is not going to matter at all in a
Right.
couple of years.
Right.
I think the major shift for me was when I did decide I was going to pursue dance in college, and knowing that I needed to focus on it during my high school time at my home dance studio, and just knowing that was my direction. I was going to go to school for dance, and I was going to give that my best shot.
Right.
And silly Lenape High School just really didn't matter anymore.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So, what's crazy is I think about, the cheerleader squad. I think I was introduced to cheerleaders right after like high school, like early
Yeah.
college, right? Like freshman year of college. And the girls in the cheerleader squad were so unassuming. Like you never tell. They walked around in sweats and they weren't divas or anything. They were just like
Right.
really passionate about getting the drill right. You know what I mean? And that's one thing that I respected. I respected that ethic, because I used to meet up with them sometimes, in the gym or like by the pool or something. And you can kind of like, I call it an intuitive connection. But you can just kind of feel that vibe. This person is
Yeah.
really about what they're about. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of that's required. A lot of it actually at some point when you really start knowing what you're doing in biz dev and in lending, right? So you're not a dancer, or do you do it like part time, like as a hobby right now? Or
Not so much anymore. I wish. I keep saying I will find my way back into it somehow. I
yeah,
kind of went the fitness route after school. It's
okay,
much more accessible, especially in Philly.
yeah,
So that's my outlet right now.
fitness, yeah, okay, we've got that in common. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll lift anything as long as I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an
Exactly.
outlet. It's not really for the aesthetics. It's just like an outlet,
Yep. Gotta
right?
burn off the steam somehow.
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot is required of you, especially at your level of performance,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, okay, so now we know who you were from like 3-year-old all the way up to high school. But, there's this thing that, us salespeople, us relationship-centered, target-oriented people, we've got to screw loose. There's something wrong with us, right? And, I own it. I own it out from the outset. I say there's a screw loose. There's something wrong with me, because I can't tell you when I'm going to get paid, but I'm going to get paid. And when I get paid, I'm getting paid big, right?
That's right.
Right. So for you to think that way, for you to actually live that way, for you to set your standards around that mindset, what happened in your life that made you say it's because something happened, right? Because we're a little crazy, right? What happened in your life that made you say, you know what? It's not about the money. It's not about the check. I know the check is going to come. It's more about the people that I'm working with. What happened? Where were you when you made that realization?
I don't know that I had one major moment. I think stepping foot into the dance world definitely had a hand in that, because sitting behind a desk really wasn't an option for me.
Right.
I did it for a little bit. I got sucked into corporate America and was at, I don't even remember the name of the company, but a well-trained monkey could have done the job. And I was
Yeah,
like,
can you just say that one more time? Because I say that to so many people, and they're like, "Why do you talk that way?" I'm like, well, it's true. Monkeys are smart, actually.
yeah, no, it is true.
Yeah.
I mean that as a partial compliment, but I was just like, what? I can't do this. What am I doing? Life, there's so much more to life than this. Like, I have to figure out a way to, I'm not going to be a professional dancer. How do I get that high, like I was talking about before, of that performance?
Right.
And I just kind of fell into property management, which was lucky and not lucky.
Yeah, because that's
But
topsy
yeah, I
turvy
just
too.
kind of stumbled into it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I could be in a not sales-based role ever again.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, same here. So did you go to like college and try to make your parents happy and try to get a degree? Did you go that route? Or did you just like say, you know what, after school, I'm going straight for the sales game?
So I did go to school. I went to University of the Arts in Philly for dance, which my parents were supportive. I don't know that it would have been their first choice for me to go to art school,
Right.
but they knew that I loved dance, and I think I would have truly regretted not actually giving it a try. And those 4 years were some of the best 4 years of my life. And I think really built my character and formed me into who I am today. But yeah, I tried the dance thing, and the money thing is a really big driver. If you're not money oriented, you can't be in a sales role.
Right.
And just the thought of not being able to financially support myself and live a lifestyle I wanted to live just did not suit me.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Who were some of your influences? Like, what influenced you as like, if you can remember, as like your very first influence, whether it was in dance, whether it was in, in sales, lending, biz dev, where you feel the most passion and you find the most fulfillment? What were some of your, or who were some of your influences?
Yeah. So my Uncle Joe, who's my dad's brother, he ran the Camden port for a very long time.
Okay.
And he kind of revolutionized how port authorities were run on the East Coast. And he really worked his way up from the bottom. He was like a deckhand on the ships at the port, like unloading boxes and stuff, and
Yeah.
worked his way all the way to the top, and really made a difference. And while that is definitely admirable, and I want to emulate that as well, what was so prevalent to me about him is you would never know who he was. He never made anyone feel lesser than him. Everyone knew his name, but if you just saw him on the street, he looked like any other person. And his main goal in life was to help other people. He so badly wanted to help the city of Camden, obviously one of the worst cities in the world. And just so generous. When he passed away a couple years ago at his funeral, thousands of people, and I stood in the receiving line, story after story after story about how he changed these people's lives in one way or another, whether it was handing them a $5 bill or jump starting their career.
Right.
He just had that effect on people. And I always wanted to be like him.
Outstanding. Yeah. I love it. I love it. That hits home for me because I think of, I come from the opposite where like all the men in my family like bravado, you know what I mean? And like machismo and like, bragging about themselves and their accomplishments. Because in Haiti, you don't get that, right? And Haiti is kind of like it's an impoverished country. So when they make it here in America, they're like, yeah, what? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they got it made. So for me to hear that, that's really like, I think it's reassuring to hear that a young lady like yourself, who is probably, a single child, and you're in a really, I want to say it's a male-dominated industry when you first start out, right? I know because when I first started out in sales, we were looking for girls to talk to, you know what I mean? And there were the seniors that were there were older ladies, and they were like, very accomplished. They were not teaching anybody anything. They were just like, you know what, you're the legs of the operation. And for a lot of guys who were like, testosterone alpha male, they've started to feel a little emasculated. They'd go in another direction. But then you got to think about it. I know there was one lady that I worked with, and, she was really influenced by her dad. Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, this is where gender roles are separated. And this is really about who's the most effective, at getting things done. Right.
Yeah.
And so, in a male, I think another thing too is like Glengarry Glen Ross. Have you ever seen that movie?
No.
So it's Al Pacino, Alec Baldwin, ABC, Always Be Closing. I'm sure you've heard that like a million times.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. And those were the days, where, you didn't find a lot of women that were high performers in the sales industry, a performance-based industry. So for you to, have that level of influence from your Uncle Joe, I mean, that speaks volumes even today, right? And it probably helps you with your work ethic, and it helps you, right, stand apart from the competition, I'm sure, right?
For sure. It's definitely a male-dominated industry, and especially going to meetings with men that are maybe my father's age and looking how I look, I think I'm unassuming by appearance, and they kind of expect to dismiss me. And I always think about what would I say to my dad to get him to listen to me? He's a tough guy. We're very similar, so we butt heads a lot.
Right.
So I've had to learn how to communicate with him to push for things that I wanted throughout the years. So that's kind of the mindset that I would go into those meetings with, is how would I convince my dad of this? Yeah. How would I get him to say yes to me? And that's how I'll speak to these men. And usually it would soften them up and they would actually be willing to listen to me and understand that I knew what I was talking about most of the time,
Yeah.
and be willing to work with me from there.
No, it's great. That's great. I think a lot of people, men and women both, need to hear that, because it needs to be that, like what you said, like how can you speak to your dad so that he can make an objective point, and then he looks
Right.
at you as an individual, not so much as a woman or as his daughter, which is like now favorable, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're my little girl, you can have whatever you want. I'm working on that with mine, by the way. Right? Let's talk about, challenges a little bit. So that's one of the challenges, right?
Yeah.
Being a woman in a male dominated industry. You're in biz dev. So biz dev is a lot of posturing, to a lot of like following up, following through, trying to identify a need, making yourself valuable, adding value, finding where you can add value, right? What were some of your challenges when you first started out in biz dev and eventually in the lending space?
Yeah, I mean, getting started is so tough when nobody knows who you are, and maybe you're with a company that doesn't have a well-known name or something like that. It's really tough to get off the ground, and the only thing you have to rely on is yourself again. So I think what I learned from that, with starting with absolutely nothing, no book of business, no real network,
Right.
um, is that's where the relationship comes in. You have to build these relationships. I mean, people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. So
Right.
how are you going to get these people to know, like, and trust you? It's probably not by talking business 24/7. Ask about their family. Find some kind of common ground, so that they remember you and then you remember them.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest pieces, I think, and I utilize today, is writing things down from a conversation, little tidbits, one kind of random thing they said, and bringing that to your next conversation
Right.
shows people that you care. And that's what goes the farthest, I think.
Yeah. Do you use like a CRM tool or anything just to remember? Because I'm sure you're talking to a lot of people and you have a lot
Yeah.
of different personalities. How do you like manage all those relationships?
It's definitely tough, and you have to stay organized. We're working through a couple different CRMs right now. We're building them out to look exactly how we want them to. Excel can be your best friend.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of handwritten notes, so I always have some kind of notebook with me, and then I'll go and transfer them back into the computer so you can easily look them up. But Excel
Right.
spreadsheets, if you don't have some kind of CRM, is definitely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't take a blanket approach to every prospect, every customer, every client. You got to make it so that it's specific to them and their needs, right? And that's how they remember you, right?
Yeah. And it's not hard. I mean, we have LinkedIn and social media, and you can do a quick name search and find some kind of commonality, excuse
Right.
me, and go from there. And I think that makes starting a conversation easier. Like, hey, I saw you went to this school. Like, I love their football team. Something along those lines
Yeah.
makes the conversation so much easier and more natural than, I have this product, please buy it from me.
Yeah. Let me tell you all about it, right? And then
Right.
just like verbal diarrhea all over them. I hate
Exactly.
that. Yeah. It's the worst.
Exactly.
So you mentioned in the beginning that you had to pivot, right? And that, you were kind of like in limbo from one job to another, and you landed in a good place where you can use your skills, and you don't have to hide your true potential, right? Tell me a little bit about Princeton Mortgage. What made you pick Princeton, and how are you using your skills there, like biz dev and all?
Yeah. So lucky enough, Princeton Mortgage found me, which was so refreshing in a time of pure panic of where am I going to be employed.
Yeah.
And once I started talking with their recruiting team and the national sales director, I'm big on vibes, for a lack of better word.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just the kind of energy people give off. I think that is one of my hidden talents, is being able to see someone's character for what it is.
Yeah.
Good judge of character. And just speaking with these people, I was like, I think I fit in here. Like, this feels right. I feel like these are people that I would want to hang out with anyway,
Right.
and could learn so much from. One of the main things that Princeton Mortgage promotes is company culture. And I've never worked with a company that actually follows through on their culture.
Right.
Yeah, usually you go in for the initial training and they pump out all this info at you about these are our core values, and then you never hear them again.
Right.
And it's kind of discouraging because you got to stay true to those things or you have no foundation. And that is something that we talk about at Princeton, I would say daily. We do team huddles and we have sales training twice a week where we're constantly talking about those things. And their biggest focus is personal growth, because without personal growth, there is no professional growth. And I think that's something that a lot of companies miss out on. And it seems a little like woo woo or whatever,
Yeah, it does in the beginning. You're right.
yeah, but it really makes a huge difference, and it builds the company culture and it builds the respect for your team. And I mean, yeah, if you're not growing personally, how can you grow professionally?
Yeah. That's what motivated my coaching business.
Yeah,
I was chasing chips in the beginning, right? And I'm like selling properties and I'm super, and I don't mean to be, but it's like, once you know the process, and it's kind of like you can get from, A to Z by
right.
skipping, the unnecessary letters, and you can still make your word, right?
Yeah.
You kind of like just simplify the process and you're like, don't worry, I got it. Trust me, I got this, right? And that used to happen to me a lot. But what I started to realize was that when I started to involve people in the process and I started to educate them about the process, and I started to figure out why they needed my service, both on the coaching side and on the real estate sales side, why they wanted to sell, what was motivating them, what were some of their, their hangups. When I made it
Right.
more about them, then they started to send me business. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And they started to build a referral-based business, both on the coaching and on the real estate side. And like you said in the beginning, you don't have a book of business. You got to bootstrap it, right? So for you to wind up at a place where the company culture is centered around personal development and then into like professional, relationships and sales and whatever it is, I checked out the website. And one of the things that stood out to me was how they simplify an annoying, super overcomplicated process that doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, for crying out loud, right? And I think what's another part of it that's a little bit crazy to me when it comes to lending and qualifying people for a loan is how many, lenders will shove different products down a prospect's throat without identifying their specific needs, right? So this is right up your alley, right? Like you are all about that relationship, right? Tell me a little bit about, because you could have went anywhere. Biz dev is huge, right? You could have went anywhere. What was it specifically about their culture, right? That you said a lot of companies introduce it, but they don't follow it. What is it that they seem to be most, that speaks to you specifically, that speaks to Gillian Balzano specifically, that makes you say, I can stay here, I can grow here?
Yeah. So I think at previous companies, there was a lack of a foundation of wanting to actually help the people that they were working with.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a service that we could provide them and it would help them in some way or another.
Right.
But like that again is missing that relationship piece. And what we focus on here at Princeton Mortgage is, like you said, that effortless process. They've coined the effortless mortgage.
Yeah, love it. Yeah.
Yeah, is that client-centric focus, and not just to get the money out of them, but to help them in some way. I think every person on the team at Princeton Mortgage, and if they're not doing this, they'll probably be out the door soon, because that's how we operate.
Right.
You have to want to help people, and that is the space that we come from when we do business, and I think that makes a huge difference in the long term, and it offers longevity for someone in business development, because business development can kind of be a thankless industry to be in. It beats you down and you feel like you're getting nowhere, and then you sign one deal, you're like, I'm doing all of this for what?
Right.
But you come from that place of you're actually helping people, and you can really truly say that and fully believe it. I think that makes a huge difference, and that's what Princeton Mortgage is all about.
Yeah, love it. Let's talk about the affinity program a little bit. What is that exactly, and how do people benefit from it, especially during these times?
Yeah, absolutely. So the affinity program is something that really drew me to Princeton Mortgage. So basically what the affinity program is is we've figured out that we can cut about 40% of our costs in terms of marketing and loan officer commissions by going right to businesses or membership-based organizations and offering mortgages at a discounted rate. So we figured out a way to save, and we're passing that along. Like we said in the beginning, rates are crazy low right now, and if you haven't thought about refinancing, you should. And if you're buying right now is a great time to do so. So to be able to offer that widespread savings, and although it is just a mortgage, that can equate to a couple $100 a month, which can be life-changing for people. And especially right now where some people don't know where their next paycheck's coming from.
Right.
Be able to offer this at no cost to the company or organization is just, it feels like I'm giving back to the community, and that's the space I want to be in.
Yeah, I love it. How are those conversations going? How are people responding to the Affinity program?
They love it. They just, every time I talk to someone, they're like, okay, what's the catch? Like,
Right.
There isn't one. There's no money. There's no contract. There's no exclusivity required. We figured this little savings trick out, and we want people to use it.
Yeah, love it. And so, the game is changing a lot. You've got, in pre-COVID, you had blockchain, and you've got Quicken Loans, and you've got all these other ways that people can look for loans and maybe get a little familiar with the criteria and the guidelines, lending guidelines, and so on. And then sometimes the deal changes hands. It goes from qualifying, it goes from a banker to the underwriting process, right? And that's where we lose a lot of control, but also we lose the most important piece, the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're treated as like a number or something once it goes through underwriting.
Right.
How do you maintain relationships when a lot of the next steps are not in your control?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's tough, and that is where things can go terribly wrong. I think the difference at Princeton Mortgage is we're so focused on hiring the right people.
Right.
I do have my hand a little bit in recruiting, so I'm able to see the back end of that, which is really fun to see, and I do like to help people find jobs.
Nice.
That's another little side passion of mine. But by having a team that you're fully confident in, and again, comes from the right place, from the ground up, makes that process so much easier. Yeah. I would so confidently hand off a conversation to one of my colleagues because I know that they come from the same place that I do in terms of how they want to do business. And I think that continues the process much easier, especially when we get into the more numbery side, like underwriting, where it can get a little tricky.
Yeah, definitely. Would you think it's fair to say, because I say this to a lot of people and I get positive feedback, but coming from somebody like you, who's you've been doing business for a long time, you're very people centered and people oriented. Is it fair to say that you like to work with the kind of people that you would actually want to do business with? Like if you weren't working at Princeton, would you, and you are on the consumer side, would you want to do business with those kind of people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that on the opposite side of the spectrum with companies that I've worked with prior, where knowing the back end, I would never want to give them my business. Yeah.
You're like, what? This is what you guys do? Oh, hell no. Right?
Not a shot in hell. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm going for, because I'm like, you know what? We all need to get paid. It's tough times right now, but hey, look, I don't know if I can really represent this, because at the end of the day, it's about integrity, right?
Exactly.
And your name is actually your brand, right? Which builds your reputation, right? So you're somebody who's centered around relationships, and I can't tell you how many conversations I've been having where it's like, I'm just looking for work. I'll go work anywhere, but what does that say about you? Right? So I'm glad you said that. Yeah. Where do you see the industry going, say biz dev 3-5 years from now? Do you see it going completely digital? Do you see yourself working digitally, virtually? It's going to be helpful.
I think it's definitely going to take a turn that way. I mean, we're obviously in a global pandemic and it's scary, and I'm sure some people will be more comfortable with in-person interactions than others. So I'm so thankful for video chatting, because on the phone just doesn't do it justice. But I hope we can get back in person. I know that's where I shine most, and you can feel someone's energy, and the
Right.
conversations just go so much smoother in person. But I do think digital is going to be a big thing. And those calls where you're not selling, you're just calling to check in on someone. How's the family? How's this going? That's going to be so much more important and give you longevity in your business development career
Yeah.
than your typical calls.
Do you feel threatened by automation at all? Do you feel like a robot can probably take your job at some point?
Yes and no. I don't, again, being someone that's so heavily focused on energy and what vibes people give off, you're never going to get that with automation. And I think people that would go that easy route will maybe regret it long term.
Yeah.
So no, my answer would be no. I'm not worried about a robot taking my job.
Cool. Me neither. Yeah. 'Cause it's about the relationships. Yeah. All right. We're going to play a quick game. It's called the lightning round. Hands down. Right. It's called hands down. So what it is, I'll give you about 3 topics, and you'll tell me your opinion on these topics. If you don't like the topics, just say pass, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay. So an example is, I don't know if this is true, but I'm just going to give you a hypothetical example, right? I've had cheesesteaks in Brooklyn. I've had them all over New York. But what I hear from my cousin who lived there like 7 years ago, right, is like the best place to get a cheesesteak is in Philly, hands down, right? Is that a fact? Do you believe that?
I do believe that. It's one of our hidden gems. You have to have a cheesesteak when you're in Philly.
Yeah, cool. Okay, yeah. I'll find a reason to go there. Maybe we'll do some coaching out there, and you can take me to a cheesesteak spot.
For sure, you have to experience it once in your life.
Okay. Let's see. First topic, COVID in Philly right now with the restaurants. Are you more comfortable eating indoors or outdoors?
I say outdoors.
Why?
I think there's still so much that we don't know about this virus that, is it a virus?
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question myself there for a second. I think taking it inside right now is a little too questionable, and we want to flatten the curve, not go back up. And I think outdoor dining is a good way to not run businesses in the ground, but also keep everyone healthy and safe.
Gotcha. Okay. Another topic. When it comes to schools, do you think that schools should be opened, or we should all try to get familiar with learning online?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think we should get familiar with learning online now, get the hard work over and figure out how to do it for real. Give us a little more leeway time there. And then, God forbid, anything like this happens again in the future, we know exactly what to do.
Okay. And last one, working digitally or going into the office, which do you think is probably what you would like to do going forward?
I would love a mix. I get a little lonely in my kitchen here by myself.
Right.
But going to an office every day does not sound appealing to me either. I think a 3-day in or out to the other is the perfect mix.
Gotcha. Okay. And finally, your bottom line, Gillian, that reoccurring truth that no matter what, any setback that you might go through, that you can, you'll say, you know what, this is my truth, and this will always continue to propel you forward no matter what. What is your bottom line?
Yeah, I think my bottom line is, as long as you are doing the hard work on the back end on yourself, personally, mentally, and professionally, as long as you are always doing your best, that the world will open up for you. And that's all you can do. You can't control everything, but you can control yourself and what work you're putting into you and the close people around you. And that's really all you can do. And I think the universe does magical things for you when you put the effort into yourself.
Right. Love it. I co-sign that too. Right there. Gillian Balzano just gave it to you straight. That's her bottom line. Where do people find you?
I am everywhere: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm all over the place.
Okay, and you're also hiring, right? Before we wrap up, just tell
Yes.
people what position you're hiring for.
Yeah, we are hiring. We are always looking for loan officers, underwriters, anyone in the mortgage industry. If you think Princeton Mortgage is a place you would thrive, we're always willing to talk to you.
Okay, sounds good. I hope everybody hears that and understands it. She recently posted on Facebook and on LinkedIn that she is hiring. So a lot of money in the mortgage industry, but what's more important is there are a lot of relationships, and that's really what makes the world go around, right? Social currency. All right. So any last thoughts, Gillian, before we say bye to the people?
No, thank you so much. This was super fun. I'm very glad to have done this.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. I'm glad that we were able to do it, in spite of all the technical difficulties and all.
Yes.
Definitely. All right. So this is the Bottom Line Podcast with Gillian Balzano of Princeton Mortgage out in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And definitely look for her on Facebook, LinkedIn, and other social media platforms, Instagram as well. All right. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. This is the Bottom Line, where we say what we mean and we mean what we say, because at the core of everything that is, was, and forever will be, there will always be the bottom line.